Welcome to MannaFest, hosted by international evangelist, teacher, and author Perry Stone. Enjoy unique insight into prophetic and practical truth. It's time to feast on fresh manna, so get ready to be blessed and encouraged. And now, here is your host and teacher, Perry Stone.
Well, it's another MannaFest program today, coming to you from the city of Jerusalem. Now, I want you to stay with me. If you never stayed with an entire MannaFest telecast, I'm going to give you two, actually it's more than two, but two revelations that in my lifetime of preaching 34 years, I did not know till 2 weeks ago. Yeah, now think about that. Now, I want to ask you a question. What does it mean to be on the right hand of God or on the left hand of God? A lot of people may not know how to answer that. If you will go to the scripture, we're going to go to the book of Job in a moment. Job said that he was living on the left hand of God where he doth work. And if you go into, for example, the Jewish thought of the right and the left hand, you know, at creation, there was darkness and light created. And the Jewish concept was that light was on the right hand and the darkness was on the left hand. And then if you go into some of the concepts of the Ten Commandments, they talk about the ones where thou shalt, which are positive, and thou shalt not, which are to some considered negative. And they say that the positive ones were created by the right hand, the negative ones on the left hand. Now, for all you left-handed folks out there, has nothing to do with whether or not you're left-handed when you write or right-handed when you write. I thought I would go ahead and say that, for my dad's a lefty, my brother's a lefty, all right? So it has no bearing on that whatsoever. But it's like looking at it and using sort of a metaphor to talk about the good and the bad. Job, we're going to go there now, and I'm going to show you some nuggets from the book of Job. And I'm going to show you something that, to me, really stirred me up. Earlier in my ministry, there was a movement that started called the Word of Faith movement. Great movement. Many of my friends are in the Word of Faith movement. But when they read the book of Job, they made Job a book that dealt strictly with confession. In other words, Job's confession may have gotten off or he didn't say the right thing, and that's why he went under the attack that he did. I'm going to show you in a few moments that the key of the book of Job has to do with blood and sacrifices, not so much with confession. It is tied to confession, but let's just go there instead of talking about it. Okay, Job chapter 1, there was a man in the land of Uz, not Oz, by the way, the land of Uz, which is believed to be south of Edom, in the land of Esau, in the land of the Gentiles, perhaps somewhere in the Arabian Peninsula. And the man was perfect and upright, feared God and shunned evil. Notice three things. He was upright. Number two, he feared God. Number three, shunned evil. There was born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters, or a total of 10 children. His substance was also 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very great household. And this man, now look at this phrase, was the greatest in the East. Now the East in the Bible always alludes to the land of Israel, what's east of it. So that would be in the territory, you start thinking about it, going toward India and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Persia and all those countries to the east. He was the greatest man out of all that territory. Now here's what happens. And his sons went and feasted on their houses, everyone in his day, and sent and called for the 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, now this is important, verse 5 is a key verse. It was so when the days of their feasting were gone about, Job sent and sanctified them, rose up early in the morning, offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. 10 children, that means he put 10 offerings on the altar, one for every child, that because he said, it may be my sons have sinned and cursed God in their heart. This Job did continually. So here's what he's doing. He's building an altar, and he's putting 10 individual sacrifices on that altar, one representing each child. Now here's a nugget for you. There was a day, not days, but a single day, when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan, Ha-Satan, the adversary, came among them. And then you get this conversation between God and Satan concerning Job. Now, if you look at the conversation, God is bragging on Job, and Satan is accusing him of serving God for an ulterior motive. Are you ready for what I'm going to say? Never thought about this in 34 years of ministry. Why does it say there was a day when the sons of God came and Satan presented himself? Because in Jewish thought that goes all the way back to the time of Moses, there was the sixth moed, or sixth appointed season of Israel, is called Day of Atonement. On the Day of Atonement, it's the day when Satan makes accusations directly in the face of God against God's people. And so on this day, which would have been the Rosh Hashanah time frame, Satan is approaching the very throne of God to make an accusation against God's main man on earth at that time, who is Job himself. Now someone says, well, are you saying, did Moses write this book? Wouldn't Moses have been greater than Job? Certainly if Moses wrote it, but no one knows who wrote it. Did Job write it? Did Moses write it? Did one of the early scribes or one of the early prophets write that particular book? So that's one of the questions that people have about who wrote the book of Job. The point is that according to Hebraic thought, Rosh Hashanah, which is called the Day of Atonement, is the day when the adversary is permitted to accuse Israel in front of God. So there was a day when the sons of God came, and the sons of God is Bnei Elohim, which are the angels, and they're coming before God and they're accusing Job. Now here's what happens. I want you to pay careful attention to this. All of a sudden, Satan says to God, if you will stretch forth your hand, or put forth now your hand, touch all he has, Job will curse you to your face. Now, when you read this in the English Bible, put forth your hand, we think it means that Satan is saying to God, take your hand and move it and hit Job with your hand. That's not what it means there. Now watch what I'm going to do. If I were to say to someone, remove your hand, we know what that means. But if I were to say, stretch your hand forth, we think it means to go forward with it that way. Literally what Satan is saying to God is, take your hand that's on him and move your hand, not on him, but away from him. See, oh my. I have a friend of mine in Texas, Lamarck, Texas, Walter Hallam, that taught me this. He said, Perry, people misunderstand what it means when we talk about the judgment of God, because they think that God is in heaven just looking at something saying, I think I'll attack that, but I won't attack that. Well, that looks bad, so let me get that. See, the hand of God, as long as the hand of God is on you, the favor of God is on you. As long as the hand of God's on you, the blessing of God is on you. As long as the hand of God is on you, the enemy is not able to get in, because it forms a protective hedge the way it did with Job. However, if God ever lifts his hand, that's when the hedge is removed and the enemy is able to come in. Even it could be natural disasters, it could be difficulties that come, attacks of satanic powers. So as long as the hand of God is on something, Satan can't get in it. But if the hand of God is lifted, he can get in. See, Satan knew there was a hedge around Job. The word hedge there is a very interesting word, because it's like creating a barrier or creating a stronghold or a fortress around someone. Now, there's been debates for years as to what was the hedge that God put around Job. Some people said, well, it was a thorn bush. Well, listen, a thorn bush is not going to keep a devil out. You understand? A devil's a spirit. In the book of Psalms, it says, the angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear God and delivereth them. And I believe that encampment round about is what Job had. He had an encampment of angels round about his property, round about his family, round about him. And the enemy tried to get in and could not get in, because the angels encamp around about those that do what? Say it. Fear the Lord. And so what did Job do? He feared the Lord. So he fits the pattern of an individual that could have angelic protection. So in other words, God literally withdrew the angels of protection around his property, giving Satan permission to go in. Now here's what happens. Now stay with me, because this is going to get very interesting here in a moment. Trust me. All of a sudden, number 1, verse 15, the Sabeans came in and began to attack. And then the fire of God, verse 16, came and destroyed the sheep. Verse 17, number 3, the Chaldeans came in 3 bands, took the camels, carried them all away. Then the worst part that happened is verse 19. A wind came from the wilderness, smote the 4 corners of the house, and fell upon the 10 kids. Now, I want you to imagine, probably within a day, of losing all 10 children in your family, losing all the wealth that you had. No animal is left. Now, you've got to get this point. At that point of time, there was no blood sacrifice. What Satan took from Job, you got to remember, how was the hedge there? What kept the hedge up? What kept the hedge up was the fact that Job offered blood on an altar continually. Are you listening? Because in that day, the hedge would have been the sacrificial blood. Can I prove it? Right out here on the Temple Mount years ago, centuries ago actually, when the angel of God was coming to destroy Jerusalem and had the sword out. Remember the story? And how David built an altar on the threshing floor of Arnon the Jebusite, which is right there near the dome, where the dome is, the rock under the dome. And it says after he put the blood offering out, the angel put his sword away. Do you know that in Exodus chapter 12, when it talks about the blood of the lamb at Passover, the blood of the lamb kept the destroyer out of the house. So in other words, in the Old Testament time, the sacrificial blood of an animal was the protective hedge that kept the enemy out. So watch this. In the early part, he's got blood, his children are protected. When God removes his hand, the first thing the devil takes is everything that has blood in it. So Job cannot run to the altar and put a blood sacrifice on the altar. Therefore, he cannot keep the hedge up. Are you listening? Because once God would have seen the sacrificial blood, God would have been required by his law and the duty of his righteousness to be moved by the sacrificial offering. So, you know, we talk about Job as a faith book. Oh, it certainly is, but it's more than that. It's a book that talks about the power of blood. Now, let's keep going here. All of a sudden, we read a verse, and I want to read this to you. Oh, wow. Okay? Job, verse 20, arose, rent his mantle, shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, naked I shall return hither. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Now, we know that it was Satan that took it, but he didn't know that at the time. Whoever wrote the book of Job tells us the story about it. Now, in Job chapter 2, you've got to watch this very carefully. There's a second wave of attack. And there was a day the sons of God came before the throne of God, and Satan came with them. Here we go again. Now, we don't know how much time, this is important, is between chapter 1 and chapter 2. It doesn't tell you that. It just says, now we have a second wave. So is it possible that here comes another assault on Job on Rosh Hashanah when the accuser of the brethren is standing before the throne of God? Now, watch what happens here. Where you been, Satan, going to and fro on the earth, walking up and down it, you've been considered my servant Job. Sure, he says. But Satan says, skin for skin, all a man has he'll give for his life. Put now forth your hand now, touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in thy hand. Now again, as long as the hand of God's on Job, Satan can't touch him. When God moves his hand, now Satan's hand can move. You see what I'm saying? Now watch what happens. Satan went forth from the Lord, smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot to his crown. He took a potsherd and began to scrape himself withal, sat down among the ashes. Now, in every translation, English translation of the Bible practically, here's what it says. His wife said to him, dost thou retain thy integrity? Curse God and die. Now, I'm going to give you a nugget. You go to any Hebrew Bible, and you read what she actually said, and here's what she said. Do you still retain your integrity? Bless God and die. The Hebrew word, we checked it out during this trip, in a Hebrew Bible, is the word for bless and not the word for curse. There's a whole other Hebrew word for curse. So here's what she said. Just bless God and die. She's saying, thank Him for what He's done, but now it's bad and it ain't going to get better for you, so you might as well die because you're as low as you get. Then Job answers her. Is that not good? Yes. Because, here's what he says. You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we receive good at the hand of God and not receive evil? And all this Job didn't sin with his lips. So here's what he's saying. You're saying to me, just bless God for what He's done and then die in this condition? He's saying, wait a minute, woman. I blessed Him when it was good. I'll bless Him when it's bad too. So she was trying to say bless Him for the good, but don't bless Him for what's going on now. That's the point. Just bless God and now die. So she's not looking into a future that's blessed. He is saying, God's taken care of me in the past, and I'm just going to keep blessing Him anyhow. Isn't that amazing? Woo! Well, that's powerful. Now, here's the part that really got to me. Several years ago, I was preaching on the book of Job at a church, and for 7 days and nights, he didn't say anything. He sat in his ash heap. He's got sores all over his body. Then in chapter 3, verse 1, after this, opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. Now look at verse 1, he curses his day. He talks about, actually, if you keep reading this, he starts talking about, let him curse the day that I was born, because it didn't shut up the doors of my mother's womb. Why didn't I die from the womb? All of a sudden in chapter 3, Job is not cursing God. You know what he's doing? He's cursing himself. He's saying, I wish I would have never been born. I wish I would have died. It would have been better for me never to have seen the light of day. Now watch this down here. All of a sudden, we come to the end of chapter 3, and Job just goes, for the thing which I greatly feared has come upon me, and that which I was afraid of has come unto me. Now, I have read that for years, and I thought, this is how it was preached when I was a young man. It was preached that, okay, Job confessed something wrong. Somewhere he said something he shouldn't say, and now he's saying, the thing which I feared with my confessions come upon me. And some people point back to the fact that he kept putting the blood offering on the altar because he was afraid his children had cursed God. Okay? Well, there's no record of his children cursing God, but all of a sudden he starts cursing his I wish I hadn't been born. It would have been better for me to die. And then he stops and says, Now the very thing which is cursing that I was afraid of has come unto me. In other words, I'm opening my stupid mouth right now and cursing myself, which is the very thing I didn't want my kids to do. You understand what I'm saying? So it really does not imply anywhere in the text that he lost his confession as far as that's concerned. But he's saying to himself, the very thing that I tried to protect from happening to my kids, I'm turning around, opening my mouth and saying stupid stuff. So there is an element of that. But you got to understand, he never sinned against God. He never sinned with his mouth. It says it twice in the book of Job. All right? Now, in the middle of the trial of losing everything you had, just imagine losing your home, 10 children, attending their funerals, having sores breaking out in your body that are absolutely unbearable. All of a sudden, God has a way in the middle of the worst trial you go through of encouraging you. In Job, Job chapter 23, he says, behold, I go forward, but he's not there, and backward I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doth work. He says, I'm living on the left hand of God. I'm not on the right hand. I'm not in the favor. I'm in the middle of the trial. There's the verse that has the word left hand on it, on the left hand of the Lord. But in the middle of the trial, let me read this verse to you. This verse says, surely there's a vein for the silver and a place for gold where they refine it. Iron is taken out of the earth, brass is molten out of the stones. He setteth an end to darkness and searcheth out all perfection, the stones of darkness and the shadow of death. Now, right in the middle of the trial, he says, surely there's a vein of silver. Here's the imagery he's giving you. He's in the earth in a dark mine. He can't see anything around him. But he says, if I keep digging in this darkness long enough, I'm going to hit a vein of silver. Now, most of the folks who watch MannaFest, you know that silver is the metal that represents redemption. So when you hear about silver, it means redemption. So Job is like saying, I know it's dark where I am. I know I'm down here searching, but you cannot find gold on the surface of the earth. You have to dig to find gold. You got to dig to find silver. You got to dig to find precious stones. So he says, if I can hold on long enough, if I could just hold on long, I'm talking to somebody. If I can hold on long enough, I'm going to hit a vein of redemption. I'm going to hit a vein of silver. And then he goes on. I love this part down here. He says, because here's the key. There's a path that no fowl knows, where the vulture's eye has not seen, where the lion's whelp have not trodden it, nor the fierce lion have passed by it. So he's saying, there is a path. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to find it, where that roaring lion isn't going to get me. There's a path where that old vulture, you know, vultures can be compared to evil spirits, not going to get me. Now, if you go into the Bible, and we're going to go toward the end of the book of Job and show you two nuggets here. You know, Job's friends come along. He's got 3 friends that weren't real friends, actually. They're telling him, you know, you got hidden sin in your life, and that's why God did it, and God's trying to bring you down because you've got pride in your life, and you had so much money you didn't know what to do with, and did get. So Job has to answer all their crazy questions, all right? So finally, God himself gets tired of it. And God shows up in the whirlwind in 2 things. These are the 2 strangest passages in the Bible. When MannaFest is over, don't do this till it's done. Go to Job chapter 40 and 41, especially, 39, 40, and 41. There's a creature in chapter 40 called Behemoth. Then there's something called Leviathan in chapter 41. This Leviathan is like a sea monster. The Bible even says it's a sea monster, a serpent with 7 heads in Isaiah. And so you get to reading this thing, you get to looking at this, okay, and you're saying to yourself, what is God doing here describing this weird thing that's over the children of pride, that no man can defeat it with natural weapons, all right? This is, Leviathan has always in the Bible been a picture of Lucifer or Satan, the fallen angel, right? Why does God come down and tell Job about Leviathan? Here's the reason why. Because the Bible said in the law of Moses, if the thief be found, he has to give back double. So, Job did not know who the thief was, but God did. Now, watch what happens after God reveals Leviathan in chapter 41. You come over here to 42, and God says to Job's friends, I didn't like the way you talked to my man Job. So here's what you're going to do. Woo! Take you 7 bulls, 7 rams, go to my servant Job, offer a burnt offering that my servant Job shall pray for you, and I'll accept him, lest I deal with you after your folly. So, Job has no blood. All his animals are stolen. But God then tells these 3 friends that's been hanging around, you go get some animals. The ram and the bull were the high priest offering in the temple, right? He says, go build an altar, put some blood on that altar. When the blood got on the altar, Job interceded for the friends and forgave his friends for what they said. And then we read this. Then the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends and blessed him with twice as much as he had before. And then they started bringing gold and money back to him. See, in other words, Satan said 2 times he's going to curse you. Job didn't curse God 2 times, and guess what happened? He got a double blessing. The thief was found. God revealed to Job the spirit of Leviathan that was attacking him that he couldn't defeat on his own. When the thief was discovered, God gave back double to him. Now, one of the things that puzzled me for years is if you read this list, God blessed the latter end of Job. This is verse 12. More than the beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. And that's all double. If you go to chapter 1, he got double. This puzzled me. And he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. That's not double. Because if he had double, he should have had 14 sons and 6 daughters. That would have been exactly. So I'm sitting here saying, okay, God, you blessed him with twice as much. How come you didn't bless him with double the kids? The Lord said I did. His 7 sons were in heaven, 7 were on earth, 3 in heaven, 3 in earth. Because you don't quit being family. Honestly, you don't quit being family just because they go to be in heaven. You'll be known even as you're known. So the message for you today deals with divine reversal. If you feel like you're on the left hand of God and nothing is going well, go to Job chapter 28 and read those first 6 or 8 verses. Keep digging. Keep holding on. If you can hold on long enough, you'll get a vein of silver. You'll come to a vein of redemption. And God will, I believe with all my heart, God will reverse the captivity.